Hi everybody, this is Jessica. Welcome back to my weird weight loss series. I am here to discuss my weight loss journey and the things which assisted me in that journey despite being non-traditional advice that most people would advise against. I will reiterate that I'm not a professional and that if you choose to take any of my advice, you are doing so completely at your own risk. I am not saying that my methods will work for other people. I am only saying that they did work very well for me. So the topic today is the hot topic of how many calories should you eat? Now, everybody has an opinion on this, and so do I. You should eat at least 1,200. You should eat at least 1,500. You should eat at least 2,000. You should never go below 1,200. You should always be below 1,200. Everyone has a different opinion. I'm going to say that the short answer to this question, if you don't want to listen to a 20-minute video, is that it varies from person to person. The amount of calories that you need per day to maintain or lose weight is dependent upon your basic metabolism. Metabolism is decided by a few different factors: your gender, your age, your current weight, which it does change as your weight changes, your fat to muscle ratios, your activity level, all of these things. Your thyroid can affect it, certain hormonal issues can affect it. Lots of things affect metabolism, and no two people's metabolism is going to be exactly the same. If you are using some sort of an app on your phone to help you with your fitness or your diet, they will probably give you some sort of an estimate as to what a typical person of your age and size and gender would have as their basic metabolism. However, this may be very, very wrong for you because it is not taking into account any number of other things, the most specific being your fat percentage. People who have a high percentage of muscle and very low body fat burn significantly more calories per day than those who have a high amount of body fat. So your metabolism is going to be very different if you have 30% body fat rather than having 10% body fat. So in my opinion, the best way to decide how many calories that you need to eat a day is to look at what works for you, and this requires a little bit of experimenting. The first thing I would tell any person starting on a weight loss journey is to determine how many calories per day you are currently eating. As I touched on my last video, this does require a very careful weighing and measuring of your food to make sure that you're giving a correct estimate or a correct number. You may still occasionally have to estimate something. If you eat out at a restaurant, you may not be able to weigh your food, obviously. If a friend says, "Do you want one bite of my pizza?" obviously you're not going to be able to measure that either. And I am definitely the world's worst about trying to take a bite of my fiance's food when he's eating it, because he's super skinny and he gets to eat all the really good stuff that I can't have except on special occasions, or at least not in a large portion. So once you get an idea of what your basic calorie intake is on any given day, then you need to aim to lower that significantly and see if you lose weight. If you have figured out that you're currently eating 3,000 calories a day, you may, depending on your size and how big you are, you may actually be able to lose weight on something like 2,500 calories a day. Now, you won't lose weight as quickly on 2,500 calories a day as you will on 1,000. Now, this is a really controversial subject because it gets into the subject of starvation mode. If you're not familiar with starvation mode, it is a term which people use incorrectly. And what they are referring to is a concept where they believe that if you do not eat enough calories, your body will sort of shut down. Your body will try to conserve its energy. It'll hold on to its fat. You'll stop losing weight despite not eating. You might even gain weight. That's the idea behind starvation mode. And I'm sorry, I understand that this is controversial, but based on all my personal experiences and my research, starvation mode just doesn't exist. It's just not real. There are some aspects of it which were based in reality, but the general concept that you can be in a caloric deficit and not lose fat without having some strange extenuating health issue is simply false. It's not true. Anytime that your body is in a deficit, it is going to eat its fat. That is what the fat is provided for by the body. It is storing extra calories into fat cells so that when there is no food, it can utilize that fat to power itself through its day and through its basic metabolism. So the less you eat, the more weight you will lose. And this is true pretty much across the board. Some people will say, well, if you start out on 1,000 calories a day, you'll eventually have to go down to 800 and then 600, and then you won't be able to eat anything at all and lose. Guys, this isn't true either. The basis that comes from is the idea that the less you weigh, the less you can eat and still lose. And that is true. A 300-pound person can eat a lot more than a 100-pound person and not gain weight, because every pound of body that they have requires so many calories per day just to exist, just to continue being there and not disappear, basically. So, yes, you do need to lower your calories in relation to your body weight. However, this really only applies to people who start with a very moderate or high amount of calories per day. If you start out losing on 2,500 calories per day at 300 pounds, and now you're 250 pounds, that's probably not going to work anymore. You may have to go down to 2,000 calories. And one thing I do want to backtrack a minute and mention, because I forgot it, is that also your activity level obviously plays a huge part of your metabolism. The more active you are, the more calories you're burning, and that definitely affects things. But going back to what I was saying, if you're 250 pounds and you're losing on 2,000 calories a day, and now you're 180 pounds, that's not going to work for you anymore. Now you're going to maybe have to be 1,800 calories. I'm using random numbers. Those numbers may be totally wrong for you. I'm just giving an example that the less you weigh, the less you'll be able to eat and still lose weight, which is what causes the plateaus that people talk about. As you slowly decrease your body weight, the number of calories per day that it takes to maintain that weight, is also changing. And at some point, they reach equilibrium where you are burning the same number of calories that you are consuming, and you neither gain nor lose. So you've reached maintenance. And if your original numbers are a little high, then you're going to reach maintenance more quickly than a person who started out with a very, very low number of calories per day. Whenever I'm dieting, I've always stayed around 800 to 1,000 calories. And if I want to, I eat less. I mean, there are days I eat 600 calories, 700 calories. I'm not starving myself per se. I'm not terribly hungry. I'm just eating very low calorie items in a volume that works for me and that keeps me from being hungry. Or maybe I've got something going on and I've just been busy and I haven't had time to eat, which happens also. And I can tell you that during my 100 pounds of weight loss, which took about 5 months, I did not plateau at any point. Whether I ate 1,000 calories or 500, at no point did I ever experience a plateau, because plateaus are caused by reaching maintenance. You cannot reach maintenance on 800 calories a day. And what I mean by that is that unless you have some very serious health issues, there is no person who's not going to lose weight on 800 calories a day. It's just not possible if you're measuring that food properly and you're actually eating the number that you think you are. With the exception of maybe a small child or a very elderly person, I just can't imagine anyone who won't be at maintenance by that point. So if you start out at that very low number, first of all, you're going to lose much more quickly than the person who started out on a higher number. And you're not going to hit plateaus, because there is no plateau to hit. You're going to reach your goal weight long before, or at least a little before, that plateau ever occurs. So that's why I've never experienced a plateau in my weight loss. However, a lot of people want to mistake a week or even 2 weeks as a plateau, and it really isn't. Like, it's really not a plateau until you're getting, well, maybe right at 2 weeks or over, but a week, 10 days, that's really not a plateau. I would say that it definitely has to be at least 2 weeks before it's a plateau, because sometimes the body just takes a longer time to process what it's doing. But when your weight drops, it is going to drop, and it's going to drop a significant amount. It's not going to drop a half pound. It's going to drop 2 pounds or 3 pounds all at once. So you just have to kind of power through those plateaus and continue to eat low calories. Because if you take the traditional advice that gets thrown around of, oh, you're not eating enough, your body is holding on to your fat, you're in starvation mode, that's not going to help you with a plateau. You're still going to continue to not lose. If you want to lose, you have got to change your caloric deficit, and the only 2 ways to do that is to eat less or to exercise more. And because diet is a much bigger factor in weight loss than exercise, you will generally be more effective by lowering your calories than you will be by adding a little bit of exercise. So going back to the starvation mode thing, this is such a prevalent myth in the weight loss community, and it's just so sabotaging. It's such a negative thing. It's harming so many people. So many people are eating more than they need to because they think they should, because well-meaning people on the internet are telling them this, or maybe even their doctors are telling them this. Doctors are not weight loss experts. Even nutritionists are not weight loss experts. If you go to an actual weight loss doctor, if you go to an in-house obesity clinic, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to put you on like a 500 calorie a day diet, usually a liquid diet, so that you can get the weight off you as quickly as possible. Because once you reach obesity, there is nothing that you can really do to your body that is worse for you than the obesity itself. At that point, it's like anything is better than being obese. I even have one story, and I'm most certainly not recommending this, guys. Listen to me. I'm not recommending this. Okay, I'm just saying it happened. My aunt, who had a problem with her weight, had gotten severely obese. And in her past, she had been a smoker, which obviously is horrible for you. I don't condone smoking. I've never smoked. I think smoking is really bad for you. But she had quit, and when she quit, she gained a lot of weight. And the amount of weight that she gained was so dangerous to her health that the doctor actually told her, I would rather you go back to smoking, because the smoking was not harming your health as much as this weight is, because you're just flat out going to have a heart attack any day right now. Now that's crazy, and I'm not saying smoke to lose weight. Don't smoke, please. It's really not good for you. But I'm just saying that if you talk to people who really know about weight, they will generally tell you that there isn't anything that is worse for you than being obese. You're risking your life every day that you're obese, because you never know what's going to happen to you. So if, you eat 800 calories a day and you lose weight, that's a good thing. Some people say, oh, well, it's not healthy. I have never had any kind of a health issue by my low calorie eating. My metabolism did not change any different from what it had always been. It didn't get permanently slower or anything. My hair didn't fall out. I didn't stop having a menstrual cycle. None of those things happened to me. There were absolutely no negative repercussions whatsoever, because for the size I was, 800 calories was more than sufficient. And when people talk about this starvation mood, if you think about it, it makes no sense at all. If you could just magically stop losing weight because you're not eating enough, why would anorexic people be so slender? Why would people, in the old World War II pictures, from the concentration camps, why would they look like skeletons? Why do the children on the commercials in the third world countries, why are they so skinny? Shouldn't they have just magically stopped losing weight when they stopped eating? Right. I mean, that's just not the way it works. And I can tell you that as an avid animal lover, I have never at any point had a vet tell me, well, your animal is too heavy, you need to feed it more. They would always say feed it as little as you can get away with, and still have the animal feel somewhat satiated and feel like he's getting enough food. I mean, you don't want to starve him, obviously, but if you can replace a huge portion of, say, his kibble with canned pumpkin, which is very filling but very low calorie, then they'll definitely recommend that you do that. So it just doesn't make any sense that your body would magically start, holding onto its fat. It's not the way biology works. What actually does happen, and this is the only thing that I can gather that maybe this myth is actually based on, is that your metabolism can slow by a very, very minute amount when you are in a high caloric deficit. The problem with the starvation mode myth is that amount of slowing is nothing as severe as what they make it out to be. The articles I've read have put the number at anywhere from 2% to 10%. And what that means is that if you, say, require 2,000 calories a day for maintenance, when you hit that, we'll use the word, even though I don't like it, when you hit starvation mode, now you only require, say, using 10%, you only require 1,800 calories a day. So does that keep you from losing weight? Does that stall weight loss? Well, no, it doesn't. And here's why. If you are a person that requires 2,000 calories a day, and you decide you're going to eat 1,500 calories a day, that is a 500 calorie deficit per day, about 3,500 calories over the course of a week, and that's enough to lose 1 pound. If you are a person that requires 2,000 calories and you choose to eat 1,000 calories, and if that slows your metabolism down, now you only require 1,800 calories per day, but you're still only eating 1,000, so you now have an 800 calorie deficit per day. So you're losing probably an extra half pound per week over the person on the more moderate diet. The other arguments that we hear against the low-calorie dieting is that it's not sustainable. I hear this really often. You can't sustain 800 calories a day for the rest of your life. You don't have to. That's not the point. It's not maintenance. It's just treatment for your disease. And when the disease is gone, you don't need the treatment anymore. I can eat 800 calories a day for 6 months. I'm okay with that. I've done it. That's how I lost weight. And then when I reach maintenance, then I can go back to eating and whatever the normal amount for my body is, which for me, maintenance is something like 12 to 1500. And that's not because of low calorie dieting. I was that way before I ever gained weight. I've always had a very slow metabolism. I do have thyroid issues and things like that. So you're not going to permanently mess up your metabolism. That's a myth. You're not going to stop losing weight. That is also a myth. The other proof we have that it is a myth is the idea that there have been some, the proof that they have is that there have been some experiments on starvation. One was called the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. You can Google it, and it proved that starvation mode did not exist. There was also an interesting case study from the late 1960s, I believe, of a morbidly obese man who did not eat for 382 days, and he did not plateau, nor did he stop losing weight until he reached a healthy size, which for him, I think they said he went from 450 pounds to around 185 pounds. All he took was vitamins. He did not eat any food whatsoever. The only calories that he ingested were, he said that, once or twice a week that he had coffee and he put a splash of milk in his coffee. That was the only thing that he ate. He did not come out of it sick. He did not come out of it in any way negatively impaired. He just came out a lot thinner. The last argument that you hear people make against low-calorie diets is that you'll regain the weight. And the person from that particular experiment did not regain the weight. They said the most he ever regained was around 10 pounds, which is fairly normal. That's a normal fluctuation, I think, for most people. And now I know people might look at me and say, well, but Jessica, you regained the weight. Well, I did, but, it didn't have anything to do with that. I regained the weight 8 years after I lost it, okay? I very smoothly transitioned from my low-calorie diet to a maintenance diet, and I did not struggle with that, and in fact continued to lose because I lost my first 100 pounds, and I maintained that. And then when I went through, the circumstances that I discussed in my previous video, I stopped eating and lost another 15. I did not regain any weight until 8 years afterward. And what caused me to regain that weight was ultimately the fact that I was eating too much. But the circumstances surrounding my eating too much were just that I had a lot of personal issues going on and I fell into a deep depression and I stopped maintaining my habits. As long as I, maintained my calories every day and weighed and measured my food every day, I didn't just magically gain the weight back. That's just not true. There's just absolutely no truth that you're just going to magically, blow up the minute you start eating 1,400 calories or 1,500 calories or whatever your maintenance is. It's just not true. As long as you're at the correct amount of calories for your body, you're not going to gain it back. Other people sometimes will say that low-calorie diets don't encourage you to learn how to eat healthy. Again, I disagree. I disagree completely. And the reason is because if you want to eat 800 calories a day and not be starving to death or feeling like you're starving to death, I mean, literally you won't, but not feeling like it, you're going to have to make good choices. You're going to have to eat more fruit or more low-calorie options because that's the only way that you can feel satiated and not feel hunger on that amount of calories. So you learn how to make good healthy choices when you're hungry. You learn to reach for, the low-fat piece of cheese or the apple slices or whatever instead of grabbing a 400 or 500 calorie snack. You also learn portion control. You learn that you can eat whatever you want if you keep it really, really small. And so you never actually feel deprived. One reason why I don't personally endorse any sort of low-carb diet or any other fad diet like that is because it does restrict your food choices. I believe you should be able to have anything that you want if you have it in the right portion. And giving yourself those calories works like that. Weight Watchers works under a very similar principle, only they use the points to, I guess, get your mind off calories or something. I mean, it's still calorie counting. Pretty much all diets work because they manage to reduce your caloric deficit in some form or fashion. So there's actually a lot of good habits that come from dealing with that low-calorie diet. It's actually a very positive thing, and you learn a lot of willpower, and you learn a lot of portion control. I did not have any issues with binging afterward. If people say, oh, well, if you don't eat enough, you'll binge later. I didn't because my stomach just sort of shrunk. I mean, maybe not physically, because I've heard that isn't a thing, but my appetite shrunk. And then I didn't need to eat 2,000 calories to feel full. I felt full on those 800 calories a day. It was enough. So at the end of the day, if you don't want to do an 800 calorie a day diet, I'm certainly not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying that the higher your calories are, the slower you're going to lose the more often that you're going to plateau. And if you choose to go with the low-calorie diet, you are definitely not going to have to deal with some sort of starvation mode issue where you just magically stop losing weight. When people say things like, oh, well, I was eating 800 calories a day and I just stopped losing, I'm sorry. Again, not trying to be ugly, but like, I don't believe you. I don't necessarily believe you're lying, although you might be. I believe that you're misinformed. I believe that you think that you're eating 800 calories a day and you're really eating 1,200 or 1,400 or whatever the number is. The other good thing about aiming for a very low number of calories is that it gives you some wiggle room for mistakes. Because even as careful as I try to be, it is possible that I may forget to write something down. I was in a hurry and I forgot to write down the cream that went in my coffee. Or maybe I just had like one gummy bear because, my coworker was eating gummy bears and I just wanted one. And I can eat one gummy bear now, guys. I don't have to eat a bag of gummy bears. Like, just one is enough. Or maybe I just didn't know how to count those calories, so I just said, oh, I'm not going to write it down. Which you shouldn't do, but I've done it. So there's a lot of situations where you might either forget to write something down, or you're incapable of measuring it due to the circumstances, or you have eaten at a restaurant where you can't guarantee the portions, and so you're going on sort of an average number from their website or something, or worse yet, when you're maybe eating at a restaurant that doesn't provide nutrition information and you're having to estimate it based on another similar restaurant's meal. And I know, for example, there's a local restaurant that I love. They serve chicken fried steak, which is my favorite food ever. It's horrible for you. It's the heart attack waiting to happen, and I don't have it very often, but I do have it. This is a locally owned restaurant. They only have one restaurant. They have no nutrition information. I can't take a food scale into the restaurant with me without seeming very odd. So I'm sitting there looking on my phone, trying to find a restaurant that I know serves a similar portion so that I can have something to write down, because something is always better than nothing. So when you aim for that very low number, you give yourself some wiggle room in case you forget something or don't get to measure something, or maybe you just genuinely mismeasure something, which is especially easy to do with measuring cups and spoons. So that low number, honestly, even those of us who are really trying and being careful are probably not eating that. When I say I'm eating 800 calories a day, it's quite likely that it's I'm not going to be overestimating by a lot because I'm careful, but I might be eating 850 or something of that nature, or maybe a little more, if it's a larger item. So my recommendation that worked for me was just to keep my calories really, really low. I know a lot of people don't agree with this. I know there'll be a lot of controversy. And again, that's why I'm not turning on the comments, because there is nothing that you can say to me that will convince me that starvation mode is real. There is nothing that you can say to me that will convince me that people who eat low-calorie diets are unhealthy, because as long as you have body fat, your body does not need food. That's just the way it is. Could you have some fatigue? Sure. Some headaches? Yes. If you're prone to blood sugar issues, which I am to some degree, you do have to be more careful and make sure that you have some items with you that have sugar in them if you start to feel a little queasy, or if you do start to get a headache. So yes, there are some caveats to doing low calorie. I would definitely recommend that you try to take in a lot of protein. I would recommend that you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, even though I hate vegetables. I don't really eat them. I do eat fruit. I would recommend that you do those kind of things, and that you take a very, very good multivitamin, because you are possibly missing out on some important nutrients, even though your body has enough energy, because calories don't provide nutrients. They only provide energy. But nutrients can be provided in a supplemental form, which is how, when these astronauts go up in space and stuff, they don't send them with a lot of food. They send them with a lot of, supplements that are in a pill or some type of form like that. So that's something that you can definitely do if you're worried about the nutrition. If you're getting fatigued, then you're probably just not eating the right things. You probably need to eat something that gives you a little more energy. I'm prone to fatigue in general, but I don't find that it's any worse when I'm dieting versus when I'm not dieting. As long as I eat enough protein and things like that, I don't really have an issue. But this idea that you will not lose your fat, that's just, as I said earlier, it's just not how the body works. If you drop your calories low enough and you have body fat, you will use the body fat, and the body will continue to eat that fat to feed itself until there is no fat left to eat. If you're 20%, 30%, 40% body fat, you can feed your body for a really long time with no food. Now, when you do reach a point where your body has very little fat on it, you're getting down to 5%, 2%, something like that. That is where a lot of the misinformation about caloric deficit comes from, because they're basing this information on people who are either malnutritioned to begin with, or malnourished, I should say, to begin with, or people who are suffering from eating disorders like anorexia, where they are already at a very, very low body weight and a very low body fat percentage and continuing to starve their body. Starving your body is not a bad thing, as long as you have something there to feed it. When you run out of anything to feed it, that's when the negative things start happening, such as it eating your muscle or damaging your organs or your hair falling out or your menstrual cycle stopping. Those are all things that have to do with your body fat percentage being too low and your body needing to pull weight from somewhere or energy from somewhere. But even in the case of a person with, say, an anorexic individual, they're still not going to just magically stop losing weight. And that's the problem, because with their disorder, they can't stop losing. So first they lose all their fat, and then when it's gone, then they start to lose all their muscle. And when that's gone, then they start to lose, their organ tissue. And then at some point, if they don't get help, they'll die. Unfortunately, it does happen. There are some people who have suggested to me that a low-calorie diet will be prone to making you anorexic. I really don't believe this either. I think anorexia is something that is completely independent of that. I think that a person who has previously been on high-calorie diets is just as likely to become anorexic. I certainly have never been an anorexic person. I've never had that issue despite my low-calorie dieting. So I don't really think that those things are connected. I think anorexia is something that is associated with individuals who have certain issues of, their mental health, or maybe even their biological health. They're predisposed to those sorts of issues. I don't know anybody personally. They just became an anorexic because they went on a low calorie diet. I don't think that's really something that happens very often. I won't say never, because you should never say never, but I would not say that I consider it to be any kind of a significant risk. Furthermore, when you lose really quickly on a low-calorie diet, you get to your goal very, very quickly, and you have a high degree of satisfaction with yourself, and it gives you a huge self-esteem boost, and it really gives you the confidence that you need to continue to lose and to continue to maintain, because you're seeing results. When you're eating a higher calorie diet and you're losing a half pound a week, you're not getting all that feedback from the mirror and from individuals and from your clothes falling off of you to tell you that, wow, you're doing really good. I know for me, when I'm losing, I really love all the compliments that I get and the people who comment on how much I'm losing. I think it's really, really helpful for my confidence. And you're definitely going to get that more on a low-calorie diet than you are on a higher calorie diet. So I've talked for a really long time about this subject because it is a pet subject of mine, and I do feel very strongly about it. However, once again, I will remind people that I am not a doctor. I cannot give medical advice. If you do decide to do this and it does not work for you, it's not my fault. Again, I'm only telling you what worked for me and what my opinion is on the articles and the research that I've conducted, that I've read about, being conducted. So on that note, I'm going to call it an end to this video. I'm going to wish you all very good luck regardless of what type of diet that you decide to do, because any diet that works is a good diet, in my opinion. Whether it is a slow or fast or high or low calorie diet, if it works, I'm happy for you. So good luck on your journey, everyone, and I will see you for my next video.